Hey friends, welcome back. You're listening to African Sleep Historian, where the past is told softly. Stories of kingdoms, courage, and wisdom retold for calm minds and restful nights. Tonight, we drift into the distant hills and quiet valleys of southern Africa to hear the story of a boy whose life would ripple through time. Shaka Zulu. Before you get comfortable, take a moment to like this video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy the stories we tell here. And if you feel the pull of your own heritage or homeland, leave it in the comments below, so we may celebrate it together. Now, let the fire crackle, dim the lights, and let's journey into tonight's story together. In the early days, when the sun rose slowly over the rolling hills and mist lingered like soft whispers over the grasslands, a child was born whose destiny was yet unwritten. His name was Shaka, and he came into the world surrounded by shadows of hardship. His mother, Nandi, carried him with quiet courage, walking paths both beautiful and cruel. The young boy's early life was shaped by loss. His father, Senzagakana, was distant, and the circumstances of his birth brought whispers and judgment from neighbors. In the small, dusty villages where cattle wandered and drums echoed across the hills, Shaka learned early that the world could be both gentle and unforgiving. Nandi, however, was steadfast. She carried her son with fierce love, teaching him to notice the small wonders of life even as the larger world seemed cold. The wind over the hills, the songs of birds at dawn, the scent of wet earth after the rains, these were the early companions of Shaka's days. Yet the boy was not shielded from the cruel murmurs of those around him. Villagers whispered about his unusual birth, about the difficulties he faced, and about the uncertain place he would hold in the clan. From these early days of alienation, a seed of determination quietly grew within him. As Shaka grew taller and stronger, the hardships he endured became lessons hidden in the folds of daily life. Each insult and exclusion shaped his mind, teaching him to observe, to calculate, and to endure. The fields where he ran barefoot, the riverbanks where he learned to fish and play, all became silent classrooms. Here, the boy listened to the elder stories of heroes, warriors, and kings who had once walked these same lands. Their words, carried on the breeze, spoke of courage that did not demand applause, of strategy that thrived in silence, and of patience that waited for the perfect moment to strike. Even in the quietest moments, Shaka felt the pulse of the land beneath his feet. He noticed how the herds moved with precision, how the birds seemed to communicate warnings of storms, and how the hills themselves could hide secrets if one knew where to look. In the shadows of early loss, he began to understand the value of attention, the power of observation, and the quiet strength of patience. Nandi's gentle guidance and unwavering faith nurtured this understanding. Her stories of resilience, whispered under the stars, lingered in Shaka's mind like gentle echoes of possibility. Life was not easy for the boy, yet the hardships carved a deep reservoir of resilience within him. He learned that the world might be harsh, that people could judge unfairly, but also that the heart could remain unbroken. Every day, the wind seemed to carry the stories of past generations, reminding him that he was part of something far greater than himself. In the warmth of the evening fires, while others slept, Shaka would imagine vast fields of warriors, drums beating in unison, and a people who moved as one beneath the sun. These visions, though distant, began to take root quietly in his mind, shaping the contours of a destiny yet to come. By the time the young boy reached the edge of adolescence, he was already different from those around him. His experiences had instilled in him a quiet resolve, a contemplative spirit, and a strength that did not shout, but endured. In the gentle sway of the grasslands, the cool touch of the morning river, and the tender whispers of his mother, Shaka began to feel a sense of purpose forming, a pull toward greatness. Though the world had not yet revealed his path, the echoes of his future could be felt in the rhythm of his steps and the steadiness of his gaze.
The mornings in the rolling hills of what would one day be called KwaZulu often arrived softly, with mist clinging to the grass and the first birdsong drifting over the valleys like a gentle melody. It was in such mornings that the young Shaka began to discover the courage that would one day define him. Courage, he learned, was not always the loud roar of warriors in battle, but the quiet, steady pulse that kept a person moving forward, even when the world felt heavy and uncertain. Each day he walked along the winding paths near his mother's small homestead, testing his balance over rocky streams, learning the ways of the wild, and listening to the wisdom that the land whispered in winds and rustling leaves. The boy's spirit was shaped not by comfort, but by trial. Shaka had seen enough of human cruelty to understand its patterns. He had experienced the sting of rejection, the subtle scorn of those who doubted his place, and the sharp, unexpected turns of life's misfortunes. Yet in these moments he found a strange kind of strength. He began to notice how animals survived in the wild, how a lone bird avoided predators, how herds moved with careful precision, and how even the smallest creatures had their roles in the vast pattern of life. Observing these things, Shaka began to understand that courage was a blend of patience, awareness, and timing. At times, he would sit by the river's edge, watching his reflection ripple in the water. The boy who looked back at him was quiet and contemplative, yet beneath the surface, a flame flickered, a hunger to rise above the difficulties that had followed him since birth. His mother, Nandi, always nearby, encouraged him with stories of warriors and kings who had once walked the same lands. She told him of the great ancestors, of men and women who faced loss and danger, yet rose to leave their mark upon the earth. With each story, Shaka absorbed lessons not in words alone, but in the rhythm and cadence of their telling. The whispers of the elders and the lessons of the land converged as Shaka grew into his early teens. He began to train himself in small but deliberate ways, climbing trees to test his strength, running barefoot across uneven fields to sharpen his agility, and listening to the distant calls of neighboring clans to understand their movements. Even the games he played carried lessons of observation and strategy. Shaka was learning, perhaps not realizing it, that courage was inseparable from intelligence, that to be truly brave, one needed to think, to plan, and to act with precision. But courage alone was not enough. Shaka also had to learn resilience, the art of rising after falling, of facing humiliation and continuing onward. His life had already offered him glimpses of this necessity. Each taunt from peers, each rejection, each lonely evening by the fire was a quiet teacher. The boy began to embrace the fact that the world might be unkind, but one could endure and grow stronger through it. This understanding became a quiet, constant companion, shaping his posture, his expressions, and the way he carried himself among others. In these early years, Shaka also felt the stirrings of leadership, though he did not yet have a throne or a name that commanded fear or respect. When other boys faltered or hesitated, he sometimes found himself instinctively taking the lead, organizing small groups in play, or encouraging others to continue when they would have given up. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but these moments planted the seeds of authority. Leadership, Shaka would come to learn, was born as much from care and vision as from power or intimidation. Through hardship, observation, and careful reflection, Shaka's inner world expanded. The boy who had once walked under the shadow of doubt was beginning to see the contours of his potential. He understood that courage was more than a reaction to fear. It was a deliberate, quiet choice made every day, in thought and in action. And in this understanding, the foundations of the man he would become were being laid, like stones placed carefully along the path of his destiny.
The sun rose slowly over the rolling hills and scattered forests, casting a golden glow that kissed the dew-laden grass. Shaka, now a boy on the cusp of young manhood, felt the weight of his world shifting beneath his feet. Circumstances forced him away from the familiar paths of his childhood. The small village that had nurtured him became a place of quiet exclusion, and he was sent into exile with his mother, Nandi. This journey was not only a physical one across rivers and valleys, but also an inward passage into the depths of his own resilience and determination. Every step he took over rocky terrain and through shadowed woods was a lesson in endurance, shaping the boy into someone who could survive and even thrive in the face of adversity. The exile brought Shaka into the wider world, introducing him to the Mtethwa kingdom, a land ruled with wisdom by King Dingiswayo. The Mtethwa were known for their disciplined warriors and their careful governance, a kingdom where leadership demanded both strategy and insight. Under Dingiswayo's guidance, Shaka began to witness the workings of a sophisticated political and military structure. Unlike the scattered and often chaotic affairs of his own people, here he observed order and precision, the way warriors trained with purpose, and how alliances were negotiated with foresight.
It was in this environment that Shaka's mind, already sharp and observant, began to absorb lessons that would later define his own reign. Life in exile was both humbling and instructive. Shaka learned the value of patience, of waiting for the right moment to act, and of understanding the strengths and weaknesses of those around him. Dingus Wayo took note of the young man's quiet intensity, recognizing that beneath the exterior of a boy shaped by hardship lay a mind capable of leadership. Under the king's mentorship, Shaka was taught not just the art of warfare, but the subtleties of strategy. How to position men in battle, how to inspire loyalty, and how to think many steps ahead while maintaining calm in the midst of tension. But beyond the tactical teachings, exile also refined Shaka's character. Living in a new land, among people who initially regarded him with curiosity or skepticism, he learned humility and the necessity of proving oneself through action rather than words. He observed how elders resolved disputes, how respect was earned through courage and wisdom, and how a leader balanced the needs of the many with the demands of the few. These were quiet lessons, often unnoticed by others, but they planted seeds of understanding in Shaka's mind, a comprehension of power that was as much about vision as it was about strength. Shaka's days in the Mtethwa kingdom were marked by discipline. He trained with warriors who were larger, faster, and more experienced, learning to match their skill with his own ingenuity. He watched as Dingus Wayo mediated conflicts and forged alliances, and he began to see that true leadership required more than sheer might. It required foresight, decisiveness, and a deep understanding of human nature. Each evening, when the fires of the village burned gently against the night sky, Shaka would reflect on these lessons. He imagined how he might one day apply such knowledge, not with arrogance, but with a quiet, calculated purpose. Exile, while born of hardship, became a crucible that transformed Shaka. The boy who had once been vulnerable and uncertain now carried within him the early stirrings of mastery. He learned to listen deeply, to the whispers of the wind, to the rhythms of the warriors' drills, and the quiet counsel of the elders. In the shadows of distant hills, with the stars glimmering above, Shaka's mind was quietly reshaping itself, blending the raw courage of his youth with the tempered wisdom of experience. The lessons of exile were etched into his being, and in them lay the foundation of a man who would one day command nations, inspire fear and respect, and leave a mark on history that would echo across generations. By the time Shaka prepared to leave the Mtethwa kingdom, he was no longer merely a boy in exile. He was a young man tempered by adversity, trained in the arts of strategy and leadership, and carrying within him the first sparks of a vision that would reshape the Zulu people forever. The quiet nights of learning, the long days of observation and practice, had all converged to prepare him for the path ahead, a path that promised both challenge and greatness, illuminated by the fire of ambition and the steady light of careful wisdom.
The hills glowed softly under the early morning sun, and the rivers shimmered like threads of silver as Shaka returned to the lands of his birth. He came not as the uncertain boy who had been cast out, but as a young man whose mind had been sharpened, whose heart had been tempered and whose spirit carried the quiet authority of one who had endured. Every step across the familiar valleys stirred memories of hardship, yet with each memory came understanding. The boy who had once felt powerless now recognized the strength that lay within him, and he carried with him a vision for his people that was both bold and compassionate. Shaka's return was gentle at first, a quiet observation of the landscape and the scattered communities he had once known. He watched how life unfolded in the villages, how people tended to cattle, gathered firewood, and shared stories by the firelight. But he also observed the divisions and weaknesses that had left his people vulnerable, the rivalries that simmered quietly beneath daily life, and the customs that, while familiar, sometimes hindered progress and unity. In his mind, a new vision began to crystallize, a vision of a people stronger together, disciplined yet proud, capable of protecting themselves and thriving in the face of challenge. He began to speak softly with elders and influential families, sharing ideas that carried weight not through intimidation, but through insight. Shaka understood that true leadership required the hearts of his people as much as their obedience. He listened first, learning the hopes and fears of those around him, and then gradually introduced concepts that would shape the future of the Zulu nation. Discipline, courage, and loyalty became more than abstract ideas. They became the foundation upon which he would build. Every word he spoke, every gesture he made, carried with it the quiet power of someone who had seen the world beyond the valley and returned with a clear purpose. Shaka's vision extended beyond the governance of people. It encompassed the very way they lived and moved through the land. He encouraged training, both physical and mental, not to oppress, but to prepare. Warriors learned to move with precision, to observe the terrain, and to anticipate challenges. Villagers were guided to strengthen communal bonds, to support one another in the cultivation of the land, and to embrace the unity that would make them resilient against external threats. Under Shaka's careful guidance, the Zulu people began to feel the stirrings of something larger than themselves, a sense of identity and destiny, quietly emerging in the rhythm of daily life. Yet Shaka was not blind to the complexities of leadership. He knew that change required patience, that hearts could not be forced, and that vision without understanding could falter. Slowly, through example, conversation, and subtle demonstration, he shaped his people. He showed that courage was more than bravery in battle. It was integrity in daily life, loyalty in the quiet moments, and resilience in the face of adversity. Every evening, as the fires glimmered against the night sky, he walked among the villagers, listening, observing, and allowing the lessons of exile and mentorship to guide his interactions. The transformation was not sudden, but it was undeniable. Villagers began to look at Shaka with a quiet respect, sensing that his ideas were rooted not in ego, but in wisdom and vision. He emphasized unity, not domination, strength, not fear, foresight, not recklessness. In the rhythms of daily life, from tending the cattle to sharing meals, his influence began to weave itself into the fabric of the community. Slowly, Shaka's dream of a cohesive, disciplined, and resilient people took root, nurtured by his calm determination and the subtle authority he carried. And so, as the sun dipped low behind the hills and the evening shadows stretched across the valleys, Shaka's presence was no longer merely that of a returning sun. He had become a quiet force of guidance and vision. His people, shaped by hardship, as he had been, began to respond to the promise of leadership that was neither harsh nor distant, but grounded in understanding and foresight. The sun rose over the open plains, casting long shadows across the tall grasses, and the wind carried a soft whisper through the valleys, as if the land itself was preparing to witness a transformation. Shaka, now a young leader with a clear vision, understood that the survival and unity of his people depended not only on courage and wisdom, but also on innovation. He observed the limitations of traditional weapons and strategies, the ways in which clans were vulnerable to attack, and the inefficiencies that slowed his people in times of conflict. From this understanding, he began to craft a revolution in warfare, one that would be as disciplined and precise as it was daring and formidable. The first of these innovations was the reshaping of the assegai, a short stabbing spear that would become the defining weapon of the Zulu warriors. Shaka modified the traditional long spear, shortening it to allow for close combat and increased agility. He understood that battles were often won not just by strength, but by the ability to strike decisively and with unity. The new weapon demanded skill, precision, and courage. It was not a tool for the timid, but for those willing to move with discipline and thoughtfulness. Training with the assegai became central to the warrior's identity, a daily practice that strengthened both the body and the mind. But Shaka's genius was not limited to weapons alone. He reimagined the organization of his regiments, grouping warriors into disciplined units with clearly defined roles. Each regiment, or impi, moved as a single organism, responding to signals and anticipating maneuvers as though guided by a shared intuition. Through rigorous drills, long marches, and the repetition of tactics, Shaka instilled a sense of unity and loyalty that was unmatched. Warriors learned to trust one another completely, knowing that their survival depended on the precision of their collective movement and the quiet, shared understanding that each man's action affected the whole. Discipline became the cornerstone of the Zulu army. Shaka believed that strength without control could lead to chaos, so he imposed strict routines, training schedules, and codes of conduct. Warriors were taught patience, endurance, and obedience, as well as the art of reading the terrain and understanding the psychology of both allies and enemies. Even the smallest actions, the way a spear was held, the stance of a foot, the rhythm of a chant, carried significance. This discipline extended beyond the battlefield, weaving itself into the culture of the Zulu people, fostering a sense of order, pride, and shared purpose. Shaka's reforms also included innovative battle strategies that combined direct confrontation with clever deception. He introduced formations designed to encircle enemies, surprise attacks that exploited terrain, and coordinated movements that required both intuition and practice. These strategies emphasized speed, precision, and coordination over brute force, teaching his warriors to adapt quickly and think creatively while remaining within the framework of disciplined organization. Even in the heat of combat, Shaka's soldiers were guided by training that emphasized control and foresight, turning chaos into opportunity. The transformation was profound. Villages once scattered and vulnerable began to feel a new sense of security. Warriors moved with confidence, their hearts buoyed by the knowledge that they were part of something larger than themselves. Shaka's presence, calm yet commanding, inspired trust and awe. Under his guidance, the Zulu became not just a people defending their land, but a unified force with a purpose, a rhythm, and a remarkable clarity of vision. In the quiet of the evening, as the fires glimmered and the wind rustled through the grasses, Shaka would observe his warriors, noting their progress, reflecting on the lessons of his own youth, and imagining the possibilities of the future. Each assegai thrust, each disciplined march, each coordinated maneuver was a small echo of his vision, a vision of a people strong, resilient, and prepared. And so, with patience and determination, the foundation of a powerful and enduring Zulu army was laid, one that would carry the name of Shaka across history, whispered among the hills and valleys, and remembered in the quiet rhythm of the night. The morning mist clung to the rolling plains, and the soft light of dawn revealed the contours of the land that would soon be united under Shaka's vision. The Zulu kingdom, once a collection of scattered clans, now began to pulse with quiet energy, each village and settlement gradually woven into a tapestry of disciplined order and shared purpose. Shaka understood that strength alone would not secure his people's future. To grow and endure, the Zulu would need alliances, diplomacy, and careful strategy, blending the art of negotiation with the precise orchestration of power. Shaka moved among the neighboring clans with a calm authority, observing their customs, listening to their elders, and learning the rhythms of their lives. He recognized that fear could command obedience, but respect and trust could bind hearts. Through patient dialogue, he began to forge relationships with neighboring leaders, offering protection and shared prosperity in exchange for loyalty. These alliances were not made hastily. Each one was considered with careful attention to the balance of power, the geography of the land, and the potential for harmony or conflict. Shaka's wisdom in these early dealings would become a cornerstone of the Zulu kingdom's expansion. But diplomacy was only one side of the coin. Shaka also cultivated a strategic vision for conquest when necessary. His knowledge of terrain, the movement of people, and the timing of attacks allowed him to incorporate both subtlety and precision into every campaign. Clans that resisted integration were met not merely with brute force, but with coordinated movements designed to minimize unnecessary loss while demonstrating the superiority of Shaka's disciplined forces. The combination of careful planning and decisive action won him both territory and respect, as neighboring groups recognized that resistance was not only costly but often futile. Shaka's methods emphasized unity. He encouraged defeated or allied clans to retain elements of their own leadership and traditions, blending them into the Zulu system without erasing their identities entirely. In doing so, he built loyalty and minimized resentment, creating a kingdom that grew not merely through conquest, but through inclusion and shared purpose. Each clan that joined under the Zulu banner added strength, knowledge, and manpower, enriching the cultural and strategic fabric of the emerging empire. Shaka's understanding of human nature, that people could be persuaded as much by honor and opportunity as by fear, became a key pillar in his approach. The kingdom's growth was also fostered by Shaka's focus on training and preparation. As new clans were integrated, their warriors underwent careful instruction in the techniques, discipline, and formations that defined the Zulu army. This not only increased the strength of his forces, but also instilled a sense of belonging and shared identity. Villages and regiments moved with the rhythm of a single organism, coordinated by signals, rituals, and shared understanding. The land, once divided by scattered settlements and rivalries, began to feel the quiet cohesion of unity, like streams converging into a larger river. Trade and sustenance were also carefully considered. Shaka encouraged the growth of cattle herding, shared agricultural practices, and cooperative efforts in times of scarcity. By providing security and stability, he ensured that the people saw the advantages of belonging to a unified kingdom. With each successful negotiation, alliance, and victory, the Zulu kingdom's reputation spread quietly yet powerfully across the hills and valleys. Rumors of Shaka's insight, his disciplined army, and the prosperity of his people traveled ahead of him, preparing the way for new alliances and peaceful integration. Evenings under the soft glow of the setting sun brought moments of reflection. Shaka would walk among his people, observing how the children played, how the elders counseled, and how warriors trained. The quiet hum of life in a growing, disciplined kingdom was a testament to the harmony he had begun to cultivate. It was not merely the expansion of land that marked Shaka's success, but the weaving together of hearts, traditions, and strengths into a singular, resilient community. The Zulu kingdom was no longer a collection of disparate clans. It was a living, breathing entity, shaped by vision, strategy, and the quiet authority of a leader who understood both the human heart and the land beneath his feet. The fires of the villages flickered softly in the evening breeze, casting shadows that danced across the faces of the people, young and old. Shaka, walking among them, carried an aura that was both gentle and commanding, a presence that inspired admiration as much as it evoked careful attention. Leadership, he had learned, was a delicate balance between respect and authority. His people had seen him grow from a boy of exile into a man of vision, and in his calm, deliberate manner, they recognized both his courage and his clarity. Loyalty was earned not only through victory in battle, but through the steadfast care and guidance he provided. Yet Shaka's leadership was not without the shadow of fear. He understood that to forge a disciplined kingdom, there could be no room for uncertainty in obedience or resolve. The rules were clear, the expectations deliberate, and the consequences for defiance, though rarely invoked, were understood. This balance of admiration and caution shaped the hearts of his people, teaching them that their loyalty was grounded not merely in their love for him, but in the respect for the order and strength he embodied. In the quiet nights, warriors whispered tales of his insight, his quick judgments, and the precision with which he could command action in moments of crisis. Shaka's presence was a lesson in itself. In councils of elders, he spoke with measured tones, listening first and weighing each word carefully before offering guidance. His observations were precise, often revealing an understanding of human nature that surpassed many older, more experienced leaders. Those who had doubted him in his youth now felt the depth of his mind, the deliberate patience that underpinned his decisions, and the clarity with which he envisioned the future of his people. Loyalty flourished in such an environment, quietly and steadily, like the roots of a tree burrowing deep into the soil. But the element of fear was never absent. It was subtle, woven into the discipline he demanded, the rigorous training of his warriors, and the unyielding commitment he expected from those under his command. The fear was not cruelty, it was the recognition that disobedience could compromise the safety of all. It inspired vigilance and care, a silent reminder that their unity and survival depended upon the collective strength and discipline of the group. Warriors learned to move with precision, to trust their comrades, and to anticipate commands without hesitation, understanding that the cost of failure was not personal alone, but communal. Shaka's leadership extended beyond the battlefield. He guided decisions about alliances, trade, and the integration of new clans with the same deliberate attention, balancing patience with decisiveness. Even in small disputes among villagers or between regiments, his judgment carried weight, not because it was feared, but because it was respected. People came to understand that his guidance protected them and offered opportunity, yet it required adherence to the vision he had laid out, a vision of a united, disciplined, and resilient kingdom. At night, the rhythmic beating of drums and the low hum of communal life carried a sense of harmony, yet always with a quiet intensity. Shaka moved through the villages as a guardian and guide, observing the subtle currents of behavior, understanding the hearts of his people, and ensuring that unity remained strong. Those who followed him did so not only because they recognized his power, but because they felt the security of belonging to a community that was ordered, purposeful, and protected. His influence inspired loyalty that ran deep and fear that ensured vigilance, a balance as delicate and vital as the wind that swept across the plains. Even as his reputation grew beyond the valleys and hills, carried by traders, travelers, and neighboring clans, Shaka remained attentive to the quiet workings of leadership. He understood that authority was a living thing, nurtured by both trust and the subtle weight of consequence. In this delicate balance, his people found guidance, protection, and a shared purpose. In turn, the Zulu kingdom grew not only in strength and size, but in cohesion, unified by a leader whose quiet authority inspired devotion, whose insight commanded respect, and whose very presence reminded all who walked under the southern sky that loyalty and courage were intertwined with vision, discipline, and care.
The sun rose gently over the Zulu lands, casting warm light across the thatched roofs and open plains, illuminating a kingdom
now alive with quiet order and purpose. Daily life under Shaka was a rhythm of discipline and care, each task woven seamlessly into the structure of a community guided by vision and strength. From dawn, the villages hummed with activity as warriors trained, herders tended cattle, and women moved gracefully through the chores of food, water, and sustenance. Even in its simplicity, life carried a subtle elegance, a reflection of the unity and foresight that Shaka instilled in his people. Children awoke to the gentle encouragement of elders, learning early the values of discipline, observation, and respect. Play was not without purpose. Even games carried lessons in strategy, cooperation, and endurance. The young learned the rhythm of the land, the patterns of the seasons, and the subtle ways in which each action affected the community. As they ran through the tall grasses, their laughter mingled with the distant beat of drums, a sound that reminded all of the heartbeat of their culture and the presence of their leader, who quietly shaped their world through structure, example, and care. Warriors began their days with exercises designed to sharpen both body and mind. They practiced spear techniques, coordinated movements, and formations that demanded precision, trust, and unity. Shaka's insistence on discipline ensured that the army moved as a single entity, prepared for any threat, yet tempered with patience and foresight. In training, the echoes of the assegai striking against practice shields blended with soft commands, forming a rhythm that carried the essence of the kingdom's spirit. Strength honed by control, courage guided by understanding. Beyond the warriors, daily life in the villages reflected Shaka's attention to the broader welfare of his people. Agricultural practices were organized to maximize efficiency, with communal efforts ensuring that food and water were shared and safeguarded. Herders moved cattle along carefully managed routes, teaching responsibility and careful observation of both animals and land. Even the smallest tasks were approached with mindfulness, a reflection of the Zulu understanding that each person's contribution mattered to the stability and growth of the kingdom. The marketplace, though simple, thrived under the balance of structure and freedom. Traders from neighboring clans arrived, bringing goods, stories, and news. Exchanges were conducted with fairness, and Shaka encouraged practices that fostered trust and mutual benefit. These interactions strengthened the sense of unity beyond the immediate borders of the kingdom, embedding the Zulu people within a network of relationships that extended both respect and influence. The kingdom's prosperity was nurtured not by domination alone, but by the careful cultivation of order, loyalty, and mutual regard. Evenings brought a gentle slowing of activity as families gathered around fires, and the glow of embers illuminated faces filled with quiet reflection. Elders recounted stories of ancestors, of victories and lessons learned, passing down wisdom that connected the past to the present. The rhythmic beating of drums served as both signal and lullaby, reminding all who listened that they were part of a living, breathing culture shaped by courage, foresight, and the steady hand of a leader who understood the hearts of his people. In Shaka's empire, daily life was a balance of responsibility, care, and vision. Every individual, from the youngest child to the most experienced warrior, understood their role in the community. The unity of purpose, reinforced by discipline and mutual respect, created a quiet strength that flowed through the villages like a gentle river. It was in this rhythm, in the ordinary yet profound details of daily living, that the essence of Shaka's leadership shone, a vision of life that harmonized courage, order, and belonging into a tapestry of enduring stability. The dawn stretched across the Zulu plains, soft and golden. Yet beneath the warmth of the morning light, shadows of tension began to stir. Shaka's kingdom, though disciplined, united, and strong, was not immune to challenges. Internal rivalries simmered quietly among clans and ambitious warriors, while beyond the borders, neighboring groups watched the rising power of the Zulu with curiosity, concern, and, at times, fear. Shaka had long understood that leadership required vigilance, not only against the obvious threats of battle, but also against the subtler, more dangerous stirrings of envy, dissent, and ambition within his own ranks. Some elders and sub-chiefs, accustomed to autonomy and accustomed to traditions that predated Shaka's reforms, resisted the new order. They whispered among themselves, questioning the young king's methods, debating whether his innovations in warfare and governance were appropriate or sustainable. Shaka, observant and patient, recognized these murmurs as both natural and instructive. He did not act rashly. Instead, he listened carefully, seeking to understand the motivations behind the dissent. In some cases, he addressed grievances directly, using wisdom and tact rather than anger. In others, he subtly reorganized leadership, aligning loyalty and responsibility in ways that reinforced unity without unnecessary confrontation. At the same time, external threats loomed. Neighboring kingdoms and rival clans, feeling the pressure of Zulu expansion, tested boundaries with raids, provocations, and strategic posturing. Shaka's response was measured yet decisive. He combined the lessons of his youth with the discipline instilled through years of training and observation. Each encounter was approached with a careful assessment of terrain, forces, and timing, ensuring that the Zulu emerged stronger, not merely victorious. Warriors learned to remain calm under pressure, to anticipate movements, and to act in unison, their confidence bolstered by the training that had become a rhythm of life. Shaka's leadership in these challenging times revealed both his strategic genius and his human understanding. He knew that fear could control, but respect and loyalty inspired enduring commitment. He walked among the villages, watching interactions, noting tensions, and subtly guiding decisions to prevent conflict before it erupted. The king's presence, always deliberate and observant, reminded his people that vigilance was part of life, but so too was fairness, care, and wisdom. Even as rivalries and threats arose, the quiet confidence of Shaka's leadership held the kingdom together, preventing fractures from growing into crises. Within the Zulu army, discipline became even more crucial. Shaka insisted that warriors maintain rigorous training, hone their skills, and uphold the highest standards of conduct. He introduced exercises that simulated the unpredictability of battle, teaching his men to adapt quickly and coordinate with precision. Through these practices, the army became not only a force of strength, but also a symbol of the unity and order upon which the kingdom rested. Even when faced with betrayal or provocation, the warriors' confidence in Shaka's guidance allowed them to act decisively, minimizing losses and maintaining cohesion. These challenges, both internal and external, also offered opportunities for growth. Shaka encouraged dialogue among clans, promoting understanding and collaboration. He reinforced alliances, both within and beyond the kingdom, strengthening bonds that would prove essential in times of conflict. At night, By the glow of firelight, the stories of previous struggles were retold, not to instill fear, but to remind all of the importance of vigilance, unity, and foresight. Through these lessons, the people learned that strength was not merely physical, but the ability to adapt, endure, and protect the community as a whole. Even as tension lingered on the horizon, the Zulu people felt the steady pulse of a kingdom guided by wisdom. Shaka's careful balance of firmness and insight, of discipline and compassion, ensured that the land and its people remained resilient. Challenges arose, as they always do, but under his leadership, they became opportunities to strengthen bonds, refine strategies, and deepen the shared sense of purpose that had transformed scattered clans into a cohesive, enduring nation. The echoes of these trials, whispered in the wind across the plains, would later be remembered not as moments of fear alone, but as the formative experiences that solidified Shaka's legacy. The morning light stretched lazily across the Zulu hills, gentle and serene, yet a quiet tension had begun to settle over the kingdom. Shaka, whose life had been defined by vision, discipline, and strength, now faced the subtle, growing currents of discontent within his own household. The very power that had forged the Zulu into a united and formidable people also cast shadows upon those closest to him. His methods, once admired and respected, had begun to breed fear and unease, and whispers of betrayal floated like a faint wind through the corridors of leadership. Shaka's later years were marked by the weight of both authority and expectation. The burdens of maintaining unity, responding to external threats, and guiding his people with wisdom fell heavily upon him. While his soldiers remained loyal, those within his family and inner circle began to resent the severity of his discipline, the exacting standards, and the relentless pace of his reforms. Even the fiercest loyalty could not entirely mask the fear and frustration that simmered beneath the surface. In this complex human landscape, the seeds of tragedy quietly took root. His relationships with his half-brothers, Dingane and Mhlonganana, became increasingly strained. They had grown accustomed to the power and prestige that proximity to the king provided, yet the shadow of Shaka's dominance left little room for independent authority. The king's relentless focus on maintaining discipline and cohesion sometimes appeared to them as an oppressive force, and over time, resentment grew into a quiet conspiracy. It was a reminder that even the strongest leaders are vulnerable to the fragile nature of human loyalty, especially when fear intertwines with ambition. The events leading to Shaka's demise were swift and decisive. On a morning when the sun's rays glinted softly over the Zulu lands, Shaka was attacked by those closest to him. Betrayal was sudden, executed with precision and cold calculation, reflecting the very lessons in strategy and discipline that Shaka himself had taught. Though taken by surprise, the echoes of his strength and presence lingered even in those final moments. The empire he had built, the unity he had nurtured, and the people he had guided with wisdom and courage all bore witness to the loss of a man whose life had been a testament to vision, resilience, and the quiet power of determination. Yet even in death, Shaka's influence endured. The Zulu people,
trained and disciplined under his guidance, remained united and resilient. His innovations in warfare, his vision of disciplined governance, and his understanding of leadership had left a foundation that could not easily be erased. Though his life ended in tragedy, the principles he instilled, unity, courage, foresight, and strategic thinking, continued to shape the kingdom and the generations that followed. The hills and plains, the rivers and valleys, seemed to carry the memory of his presence, whispering stories of his triumphs and lessons to those who would listen. Shaka's assassination also marked a period of reflection for the Zulu. Leaders, warriors, and villagers alike understood that the fall of a great figure often illuminated the complexities of power and human nature. The balance between fear and respect, discipline and compassion, loyalty and ambition, these were lessons carved deeply into the collective memory. Even as mourning spread quietly across the land, the people recognized that the enduring strength of their kingdom depended not on one man alone, but on the enduring principles and structures he had built. In the hush of the evening, as the last embers of fire glowed against the gathering darkness, Shaka's legacy became both tangible and ethereal. His life had been marked by struggle, vision, and remarkable achievement, yet also by the vulnerabilities that accompany greatness. And in that delicate tension between triumph and tragedy, the story of Shaka Zulu continued to echo through the hills and valleys. The sun dipped gently behind the distant hills, painting the Zulu lands in shades of amber and violet, and the soft evening breeze carried with it a sense of reflection, of lives touched and shaped by Shaka's enduring influence. Though he had met a tragic end, the foundations he laid remained unshaken. His vision, discipline, and innovations had transformed a collection of scattered clans into a unified kingdom capable of defending itself and projecting strength across the land. The lessons of his life continued to resonate, quietly guiding the hearts and minds of the Zulu people for generations to come. Shaka's military reforms, once revolutionary, became the standard by which strength and organization were measured. The impis, trained with precision, discipline, and unwavering coordination, remained a symbol of Zulu power. Warriors remembered the rigorous drills, the short stabbing spears, and the formations designed to surround and outmaneuver enemies. Yet beyond their effectiveness in battle, these methods fostered unity, mutual trust, and shared purpose, qualities that extended into daily life. Through the echo of the drums, the rhythm of coordinated marches, and the stories passed from warrior to warrior, Shaka's teachings endured, shaping the ethos of courage, loyalty, and strategic thinking that defined the Zulu identity. Beyond warfare, Shaka's influence permeated governance and society. He had demonstrated that leadership required vision, decisiveness, and the careful nurturing of both respect and loyalty. The structures he established, alliances with neighboring clans, integration of conquered peoples, and cultivation of community cohesion, created a framework that would sustain the Zulu kingdom long after his death. Chiefs and elders followed the principles he had introduced, guiding their people with a blend of discipline and care that reflected the lessons learned under his watchful eye. These practices became part of the cultural fabric,
a quiet inheritance that continued to shape decision-making, social cohesion, and collective identity. Shaka's impact also extended beyond the borders of his kingdom. Neighboring groups, traders, and distant observers recognized the Zulu as a people transformed, disciplined, and formidable. Stories of Shaka's leadership, his innovations in warfare, and the unity of his people traveled like whispers on the wind, inspiring both admiration and caution. His legacy became a benchmark not only for military prowess, but also for the ability to harness human potential through vision, discipline, and understanding. In this way, the influence of one man reached far beyond the hills and valleys of KwaZulu-Zulu, leaving traces in the consciousness of the wider region. Yet perhaps the most enduring aspect of Shaka's legacy was the intangible, the sense of identity, pride, and resilience he instilled in his people. He had shown that greatness required both courage and wisdom, that leadership demanded attention to the hearts of men as much as to their actions, and that a community could rise only when united by purpose and guided by vision. Even in moments of trial or threat, the Zulu drew strength from the lessons of his life, recalling the disciplined rhythms, the careful strategies, and the principles that had elevated them from scattered clans to a cohesive, respected nation. In the quiet evenings, as firelight glimmered across village faces and the stars appeared one by one in the velvet sky, the memory of Shaka lingered like a gentle wind. Stories of his triumphs, his innovations, and the challenges he overcame were recounted softly by elders, weaving history into the fabric of everyday life. Children listened, absorbing not just the narrative of battles and strategies, but the deeper truths of leadership, courage, and unity. Through these stories, Shaka remained present, not as a distant, untouchable figure, but as a guiding spirit whose lessons shaped minds, hearts, and the rhythm of life itself. The Zulu kingdom, disciplined, resilient, and united, carried forward his vision. And even as time passed, the echoes of his life resonated across the plains and hills, a reminder that the actions of one determined visionary individual could ripple outward to shape generations. Shaka's story became more than history. It became living memory, a quiet force connecting past and future, inspiring courage, wisdom, and reflection. The night had wrapped the Zulu lands in a gentle, velvety darkness, and the stars above shimmered softly, like quiet sentinels keeping watch over the rolling plains. The air was still, carrying the subtle scent of earth and grass, and the distant drumbeats of villages lulled the land into a slow, rhythmic calm. In this serene moment, the story of Shaka Zulu comes to rest, a life of courage, vision, and transformation, leaving whispers of wisdom that stretch across time. His journey was one of triumph and tragedy, of discipline and insight, yet through it all, the spirit of his leadership remained vivid in the hearts of his people. Shaka's legacy was not merely measured in the expansion of territory or the innovations in warfare, but in the quiet strength he inspired. He taught that unity could be forged through understanding and patience, that courage was not simply the absence of fear, but the careful shaping of it into purpose. As the Zulu kingdom grew, so too did the shared sense of identity, loyalty, and connection that bound clans together. Even when his life ended in betrayal and loss, the lessons he had instilled endured, guiding warriors, chiefs, and villagers alike through challenges, victories, and the rhythm of daily life. Under Shaka's guidance, the Zulu had learned that every action mattered, that every contribution was part of a greater whole. The discipline of warriors, the care in tending herds, the attention to agriculture, and the subtle observance of rituals all became threads in a tapestry of resilience and harmony. The people carried these lessons into each day, walking through life with awareness, courage, and respect, qualities nurtured by a leader whose vision was as vast as the rolling plains themselves. Now, as night deepened, the landscape seemed to exhale a quiet reflection. The hills, the rivers, and the open grasslands whispered the enduring story of Shaka Zulu, reminding all who listened that even in the face of struggle and adversity, a single life, guided by insight and determination, could ripple outward to shape generations. His presence lingered in the cadence of disciplined armies, the unity of villages, and the careful watch of elders who carried forward his teachings. The quiet authority he embodied, combined with the wisdom and foresight he imparted, became a guiding current flowing through time. As your body settles and your mind softens, allow the echoes of this story to drift gently into your thoughts. Imagine the plains under a blanket of starlight, the flicker of fires illuminating faces filled with quiet reflection, and the soft whispers of history weaving through the air. Feel the strength, courage, and unity of Shaka's people surrounding you, wrapping you in warmth, connection, and gentle assurance. Let the rhythm of the land, the pulse of the kingdom, and the lessons of one extraordinary life guide your breath and ease your mind. Now, with each inhale, draw in calmness and clarity. With each exhale, release tension and worry. Picture the children of the Zulu villages listening to stories of courage and vision, the warriors training with disciplined grace, and the elders passing down wisdom that has endured for generations. Let these images settle softly in your heart, reminding you that resilience, courage, and unity are qualities you carry within yourself. Rest now in the quiet embrace of night, guided by the gentle rhythm of history. Allow Shaka's story of vision, strength, and the enduring power of leadership to dissolve into your thoughts and settle into your soul. The plains are calm, the fires glow faintly in the distance, and the legacy of courage and insight drift through the Zulu lands like a soft, steady wind. Your mind grows lighter, your breath more even, and a sense of peace stretches quietly through you. And as sleep approaches, remember this: the echoes of greatness, of care, vision, and unity live within each of us. Like the quiet stars over KwaZulu, they shine softly but persistently, guiding us gently through the night, comforting us, and reminding us that calm, wisdom, and strength endure long after the day has passed. Now, as the night deepens and the stars twinkle quietly above the plains of KwaZulu, let your body and mind settle into gentle stillness. Imagine the soft rustle of the grasses in the cool evening breeze, the faint, steady rhythm of distant drums carrying the heartbeat of the land. Each breath you take mirrors the calm, steady flow of history. the rise and fall of kingdoms, the courage of leaders, the quiet strength of those who came before. Let Shaka's story rest softly within you. Feel the wisdom in his victories, the lessons in his challenges, and the enduring presence of vision, discipline, and unity. Allow the echoes of his life to remind you that strength is not only measured in power, but in patience, foresight, and care. Every lesson he left behind is like a gentle guide, whispering that even in moments of difficulty, purpose and courage can shape a lasting path. Breathe in slowly, letting the warmth of this reflection fill you. Breathe out gently, releasing any tension, fear, or worry that clings to the day. Imagine the hills, the rivers, and the villages resting quietly under the moonlight, carrying the memory of courage and wisdom. You are part of this living tapestry, connected to the past, present, and future through stories that endure, through lives shaped by vision and dedication. Allow your mind to drift, as if walking slowly along the soft, rolling plains. Each step is a rhythm, each step a reminder of connection, resilience, and calm. Let the night embrace you, and let your thoughts settle into the gentle hush of rest. Feel the quiet strength of Shaka's legacy in your own heart, inspiring peace, patience, and reflection as you move closer to deep, restorative sleep. Know that these stories live within you, carried softly in your dreams, guiding you with courage, wisdom, and unity. The world outside may rest, but the quiet echoes of history will remain with you, nurturing calm, insight, and gentle strength as you drift into a night of true tranquility.